Well, hello.
Hello.
What's going on?
Why have we got these posh accents, Ashley?
I don't know, but why?
What are we doing here? Why are you guys in my Zoom call?
I don't know. Why have you got glasses on?
Why not?
There's a lot of whys going on, isn't there?
There is a lot of why. Why are we here? What is this?
Why are we here? What is this? That's a great
What is
segue in, Martin. What are we doing
Well,
here?
first of all, this is Friday. Welcome everyone to another week that I hope you smashed. And as people are joining from the live, please tell us where you're from and how was your week from 1 to 73.
Wow.
And also, while you give us a little breakdown and voting of your week, Wes, what is the water cooler?
Oh, the water cooler. It's funny you asked that. It's a theory and a concept that came from the US of A. And killing time on a Friday afternoon, you normally go and chat shit to somebody you don't know around a water cooler, and you probably learn something you didn't know before. So we decided to do the same thing online. Chat shit.
Yes.
Well,
We don't really know, but
also,
learn something new.
something there. Did it come from the US?
I mean, I kind of know it as the US as a thing.
You know, every office has a water cooler.
Yeah, but they don't just like say chilling at the water cooler, do they?
Or Guinness dispenser. Depends from the office.
Yeah. Maybe we should ask our guest today. She may know.
Or he might know. Or we don't know.
I think she's definitely a she, Martin. We just met her. Like, she's definitely...
I know, but the people in the call don't know, right? You just gave away a secret.
Okay. My week, though.
Give it away.
Where we're going on to numbers. I want to know where people are from today, because so far there's Ian and Mark in the chat. It's not like normal, is it? What's going on? Come on.
Where's Mark from? Do we know?
Where's what?
Mark from? Come on, tell us, Mark. I know
Mark, where are you from, Mark? I know where Ian's. I know where they're both from, to be fair.
Anyway, Wes, how was your week?
It's great. I'm like high up in the 60s. I wouldn't say I'm like 73, but I'm like high 60s. I had a little turbulence. I'm sure you have as well, being in a war zone. But yeah, a little turbulence. We're going all the way. 67.
Ash?
Yeah, up and down. One, because what's going on around the world, it's hard for it not to affect you. And two, yeah, I've just been busy. So up and down, up and down.
Can I applaud you on the fact that you just know what's going on in the world? It's not like
I don't know what's going on in the world, but it doesn't look great. Anyway, it's going to get better in the next hour.
Yeah, let's go. Let's crack on.
We're going to be talking about naming of companies, products, and particularly in corporations, because this is different. We've had a naming episode before. This one's specific.
Master Rob Meyerson, no?
Yeah, Rob Meyerson one. Yeah. So yeah, most people think naming is mainly a creative endeavor, which is true to an extent, right? But in today's episode, we're going to discuss why it's so much more. I think we did a little bit last time, but I think this one's going to be slightly different. So we're going to unpack the ins and outs of naming as a system, and then uncover what else is involved. And as usual, ladies and gentlemen, we've brought someone who knows a thing or two about naming. She is an internationally published and recognized authority on naming in the brand space with 17 years of experience running global creative agencies. She's worked.
Excuse me.
She's worked along some heavy-hitting projects with clients such as HP, Reebok, Sony, Nestle, Puma, Gap, the Wall Street Journal. I can go on. You'll check the website afterwards. Her company, based in LA, is dedicated to naming as a discipline. In fact, that's exactly the company's name, the Naming Group. Please welcome to the water cooler, ladies and gents, the one and only Nina Beckhardt.
Hey! Good morning.
What's up, Nina?
Hey, y'all.
You guys either got very smart or very lazy naming your own company. Which one of the two?
The way that I describe it to people is like we're the bald hairdresser, where like the focus isn't on us, it's on your name. Yeah. Exactly.
I love that. It's like the cobbler shoes. The cobbler shoes are always broken, right? So you get something away. Love it.
And before we get started, Nina, we had to cancel before because of some tech issues that we had. So it's great to have you here. And we were talking a lot on email about this shirt that you're wearing as well. So can we get this out of the way?
A bit of a lowdown.
Fashion first.
Yeah.
We'll do a little tour.
Let's do it.
Most importantly, what we talked about the most, we have a kangaroo. We have a giraffe. I want to say this is a lion, maybe?
Or a puma, maybe a puma.
Puma? Yeah. Gazelle. Serengeti vibes.
Serengeti. Is that the name of the shirt? Because that's what I was going to ask.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think nowadays that we are only seeing each other from here up. Like, you got to keep it exciting. That's my MO.
Ash, what's your problem with that? You keeping it exciting?
What do you mean? What's my problem with it?
I mean, because like, you're just all dressed in black. Like, you're not very excited. Like.
No, I'm not.
Yeah, I feel underdressed.
Boring old black. So Nina, let's dig in into your history a little bit, your experience. Like, how did you, like, what have you done? Like, where did you start? Designer, brand strategist, and then how did you get into naming? Can you take us through your journey?
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know if you all have this in the UK, but maybe you have something similar. Do you use Craigslist?
Yeah. Well, there's not in the UK, but yeah, there's a version of it. Yeah.
Okay. So when I write my memoir, it's going to be called I Found My Couch and My Career on Craigslist. So my very first gig at a naming agency I found through Craigslist, when that was still like a pretty legit place to find a gig. That was at a small agency called Namebase that was based in New York City. And I was there like right after college. So I just fell right into naming right away. I studied art and psychology, which absolutely prepared me for this work, but I didn't know that naming was a discipline before starting to work at an agency like that. And then I was there for about 2 years before I left and started the naming group. So that was in 2009, and just been rolling ever since. So it's my background is interesting compared to a lot of my colleagues where they cut their teeth at branding agencies or maybe started in another discipline and then moved over to naming. Like, I've been all naming all the time, basically since I was a wee babe in the workforce.
Wow. And what is the connection between art and psychology then?
Interesting.
Probably more directly with psychology, and I think also in no small part being having a dad who is a psychiatrist and a lot of friends in his orbit, and sort of always thinking about not just sort of the immediate explicit message, but the implicit or sort of underlying and subconscious meaning of things. That's a beautiful way of saying overthinking things. So yeah, I think the connection to naming is really strong, and that's prepared me really well, where the way that I say it is like, if my job were about the things that people think that it's about, which is like, let's all drink a ton of coffee and come up with names, then I think I would have been bored and I probably would have switched careers by now. But where I see the industry moving, the white space, and where the naming group is really focused right now is much more about the underlying psychology of naming, and specifically at large corporations. So the part that I love is working with a big client and they say, like, you know, we've tried to come up with a naming system that works, or we've tried to name a product, and we have so many decision makers and we really can't get people aligned. So in that case, no matter how good your creative is, that will not create alignment. Like, I think people think that this lightning bolt will come in and everybody will be like, oh my gosh, that's it. But that's where the psychology comes in, is you have to learn the personality profile of all of those decision makers, the organization, and sort of like really tap into that. So that's a very long-winded way of saying that so much of our work is psychology. And that's the part that I truly, truly enjoy.
So Nina, on that note, is that the biggest challenge then? Is it alignment when it comes to that, or are there other things involved as well? Because obviously the naming anything brand work should not be subjective, and naming is probably one of the most subjective and emotionally led things. That's why you have very different opinions, right? So how, one, is that the biggest challenge, is the alignment? Two, what other things? And then three, how do you attack that?
Yeah, good question. So I think the sort of two largest challenges in naming are what I just talked about. The as my colleague John puts it, wrangling highly competent cats, like all of those executive level and middle, brand level decision makers, and making sure that they're aligned. The other, even further upstream challenge about naming that I relentlessly talk about is the difference between the preconceived ideas about what naming is and then what naming actually is when you're creating a brand name and when you're doing that at scale at a corporation. So I think what it comes down to is, unfortunately for our profession, the word naming is used so broadly. Like, I don't know if any of you have kids or a dog or you've named something before. And that same word, naming, is used to describe a collaboration SaaS product that's going to have to be marketed to like millions, potentially billions of people all over the globe, that has to pass legal, that has to be agreed on by people, that can't be offensive in any of those languages. And so to have the same word, ironically, now that we're talking about words and labeling things, applied to, I'm going to name my kid Nelson, versus I have to name this global SaaS product, is like, it creates such a unhelpful assumption, because these teams go into thinking that when we're going to name something, that it's going to be creative, that it's going to be sort of this like mystical experience. I think advanced brand marketers know it's not going to be like that, but that sort of underlying understanding of what more general naming is definitely taints and makes people feel like, oh, naming a product should feel similar to that, when in reality, it's not similar to that at all. So I think so much of the work that we end up doing at the naming group is sort of like slowing down cognitive biases and retraining clients to be like, yeah, this is quite different. The goals are different. The stakes are way higher, things like that.
So there's a educational and awareness piece before the actual doing part.
Yes. And we have to get educated too on the client side, and really learning about, how do you make decisions? What is your hierarchy structure like? Is it pretty flat, or do we have to sort of bring decisions up the ladder? But yes, to your point, to your question, so much of what we end up doing is, like, we have a deck that we present really early on in a client relationship that's just debunking myths about naming and what the naming process looks like, so that people sort of come in with a clean slate and correct expectations.
So what is the wrong process and what is the right process?
Very black and white. No, I think if I were to answer that, I think, there's different types of naming agencies out there, and everybody has their own approach. For me, the most right process for me, and that I've found successful, especially with enterprise brands, is leaning way more into strategy, leaning way more into data, into evidence. So I think in another life, I probably would have been a lawyer, because the way that we present...
Not with that shirt on,
yeah, a special lawyer. the way that we present any type of work to clients, whether it's naming architecture, brand architecture, or an individual name or naming systems, before we even get to the creative part, the output, so whether that's a name or a naming architecture model, more than 50% of our process is research, is talking with stakeholders, is just reviewing like reams and reams of documents and information, and then taking that and in a lot of ways like building a legal case, like this very airtight way of looking at things, so that when clients are presented with creative, it just sort of locks in. They're like, oh,
Yeah,
this
I
is
love that.
exactly what I was expecting. And I think so, sort of looking at it in that sort of polarized way, if that's the more right way, for me, in my experience, the wrong way is relying on like the magic of creative to sort of woo people and sway people, because it's too risky. And a lot
I
of the
love that.
times it doesn't really work. Just like presenting a ton of great name options and sort of like hoping that, you know, some will land, let alone one will land across 12 people. It's just statistically, it's not going to work out that well.
Yeah, sounds familiar, isn't it, Wes?
Yeah.
Prepare the stage for the act.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a lot of like parallels in like your process, especially about like demything. Let's like clean the slate so we're all talking the same language, and therefore everything that we're going to work on going forward, we're all aligned to. It's
Yeah.
interesting that you talk about like how much alignment is needed. Is that something that appeared over time, or is that something that you went in with when you kind of created the naming group?
It appeared very quickly in my experience of naming, even when I was at Namebase, the first naming agency that I worked at.
Right.
That just became so immediately clear to me right away that there were these like executive swoop-ins at the last minute. Actually, pretty soon after founding the naming group, we wrote a white paper on that subject. It's been on the website for a long time, called Dear CMO, and it's all about that. It's all about executive level decision makers coming in at the final stages of creative, and just looking at names, but having not been exposed to the underlying strategy before. You guys are laughing because like this is across all of brand. Like
Yeah.
this is our whole life.
Yeah.
And I think the stakes are so high with naming because it's not just executive level approval, but it's often that in order to get a name over the finish line, or a naming strategy or naming guidelines, especially, it is so incredibly interdisciplinary. Like people on the product team, people in sales, people in marketing, like everybody uses the name. So everybody has an opinion on it. So, you know, I think that's something that's just so crucial, you know, in terms of getting alignment from people on that.
And then a personal like point of that happened in our journey, and I think within the short time of like trying to sell strategy or sell brand, we were finding reversing that and actually selling alignment, or at least showing that the client alignment is probably the most valuable thing you're going to get from this session. That happened as like, is that a way that you go in and sell brand now? Or do you lean into that alignment as an output, or is it just sitting on the undersurface? If that makes sense.
You mean like when I go into like a pitch or a new client, like do I lead with that?
Yeah, or does that come into play? Because I think a lot of people won't realize that, and I think until you've kind of been in practice and rooms and realize that, you know, to take that journey to get everyone in, that was going to be my follow-up question, but to get everyone into that session, that's important. A lot of CEOs and C-suites don't feel they need to be in it until they get to that point, and then they go, oh, I'm not happy with this. Where's this come from? What's this crazy name? Like, you know what I mean? And then they have the blocks on. So I was wondering, twofold question really. How much does that come into your pitch, you know, and you start up and into your initial journey? And then how do you convince, because that's the word we need to use, how do you convince those C-suite leaders to be in that room from the start because it's that important?
But just before you answer that, because it is related, Wes, don't worry. You wrote a post with this pie chart.
I was leading into this.
Oh, well,
Yes.
Well, do you
Easy, boys.
if I share that pie chart on?
Please.
Yeah.
Please.
Do it.
Yeah.
So this is it. Do you want to talk about that and then answer Wes's question within that?
Absolutely. Yeah. This is my desert island slide. This is like my ride or die number one. So to answer your question, Wes, I think, much earlier in my career, I might not have led with that.
Yeah.
But, as you said, more experience, being in the room longer, sort of knowing sort of where the struggle really is. And also watching the RFPs and the requests that have come through over time. People are not, we still get requests like, hey, can you help us come up with this individual name or this, mini architecture, or this larger, like there's naming specific requests, but the number of requests that have come in, like we cannot get names through. Like we have sort of an organizational issue, and it's so hard for us to drive alignment that it's now a drag on our business, and people coming in and asking for that. It's now absolutely like pivotal, intrinsic to everything that the naming group is about. So in an initial conversation with clients, they will see that pie chart. And a lot of the times there's like laughs, there's knowing laughs, or there's like a sigh of relief that people are like, you get it, like you understand my struggle. And I think that's such an important thing to talk about. We've been doing a lot of work over the past year with a big QSR brand in the US, and there's this sort of bifurcation. There's the brand managers that we work really closely with, lockstep. They are responsible day in and day out for getting names approved and creating them and making sure that they adhere to the architecture and making sure that everybody on the culinary team and on the product team and on the digital team are all aligned. And then they have to take those names to executives for approval. And what I always say is that there's this like inverse relationship to the amount of power that executives have and the amount of requisite knowledge that they have about naming and about that's trying to be approved. And so much of the work that we end up doing is trying to get those groups to better understand one another. So when the brand manager kind of goes to their boss or to their boss's boss and says like, hey, I'd love to have you look at the naming strategy just for a moment beforehand, trying to get those C-suite leaders to say yes. And it doesn't have to be, this hour-long dog and pony show. It's really, we talk a lot about this in naming. It's the mere exposure effect, which is like a very fancy psychological term for referring to like the more familiar we are with something, the more likely we are to like it, to approve of it. So it's sort of building an appropriate bridge between those two groups so that names can move through more efficiently.
It's interesting what you say, because like in a lot of the work that we do, we always had to manage people with authority in those rooms, right? And we're tapping in between logic and authority all the time, right? So a lot of these people come in with an authoritative kind of comment or feedback, which doesn't match the logic feedback that we are trying to push into this conversation, right? So there's a lot of emotionality in there. But Nina, I want to ask you something, and it's a theory that I always had, right? Like I always like to say to my clients, the name is important, but also what you made out of the name maybe is even more important. And by that I mean, let's imagine that that an alien, a form of intelligent life being, lands from planet XYZ 123, 3,000 galaxy years from here on planet Earth. and sees a piece of aluminum with a half-eaten apple on it, and then understands that the name of this company is Apple, they will not have that emotional connection with the brand that we have. So my question is, like on the scale of the name importance and what we actually make out of this name after, what is your thinking into that? Because even if we look at Amazon, for example, again, it doesn't mean anything. It's not really directly connected to the services, right? But then the story of Amazon, Jeff Bezos, everything that happens with it, it gives us a specific emotional connection with the brand.
Yeah, totally. I think, there's always these sort of core brand reasons why it makes sense to go with a name that's more suggestive, like what you're saying, where it's not calling it, digitaldelivery.com. It's calling it Amazon or something like that. So I could talk all day long about all the specific reasons why it might be important to choose a name like that. But I think the more interesting part of your question, and sort of where I always like to focus, is like, how did that name get approved? Like, how did it make it into the marketplace? And it's really that brand team that put together those names, whether it was like Steve Jobs and his co-founders in the garage, or whatever the Amazon decision-making team or sort of early brand team looked like, they had vision and they had patience. And I feel like in modern times, the way that a lot of brands want to think, and sort of it feels more comfortable to have more of like a quick hit, and to make sure, like, let's do some research to make sure this name is going to land exactly how we want it to. But what you're saying, Martin, is that the ceiling of a name, like the way that it can sort of expand into the world, you can't know that at the beginning. You kind of have to take this leap of faith. And so there's a piece that I wrote about on my Substack, Naming at Scale, that is about that. That is about just kind of setting in place a set of names. It was actually, I was talking with Joel Iwanek, who I worked with at General Motors, and he was talking about his time at Porsche, and that the executive team had to sort of make a decision to switch away from just alphanumeric names for the cars. And they moved to the names that we're familiar with now, like Cayenne, Macan, things like that. In the beginning, those names were so weird. Like, people were probably shocked, like, this isn't the Porsche I know. Where's my 911? But that brand team had to have vision and patience and tenacity, and know, like, all right, we're going to get some flack in the beginning, but we have a plan for this.
Yeah.
As a result of that, they opened up their market immensely to, like, not just luxury car people, but to sort of a different upmarket consumer. So patience, vision, tenacity is required in naming.
I love that, because a lot of people also make the mistake to be so specific and descriptive about the specific product they're serving now, which they're constricting themselves in that category and not allowing themselves to go over it. For example, there is a brand in Cyprus which is called 4-day clearance, right? And the whole concept started for a 4-day furniture clearance, but now they do much more.
Yeah.
And they said, yeah, we are open 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And I'm like, yeah, but you're called 4-day clearance.
Yeah.
So what are we going to be doing with that? And that is a specific testament of the lack of vision on the naming situation, right? Because the name became an anchor for the future business ambition of that organization.
That is one of the more common asks that we get when we're asked to do corporate naming. Is we have been in business for 10 years, 20 years, and our name is now limiting us. We actually just completed last year, we renamed a publicly traded B2B tech company, and their name, the 2 words that it was built off of, were incredibly limiting. Not for the first few years that they were in business, but the more successful they got and the more that they saw that they were able to do and the audiences they were able to serve, it became obvious. It became time that we had to change the name. So in the instances that we do get to work with founders, like for funded startups and things like that, we're always talking about extensibility, which is like, I know that you are laser focused day in and day out on what you're doing today, but is there something that we can lean into about the philosophy of your business or the way that you work that will always be true, even like 40 years from now when you're retired and somebody else is running your company? So it's so crucial.
So on that note, Nina, when you've got a company that's hit a ceiling and they identify that the name is the issue or that's stopping them to kind of diversify, how do you tackle that problem? Because I'm assuming they've got to that point where they've been super successful, but they want to grow because there's equity in the name, there's equity in associations of that name. And then how do you manage that? Like, are you kind of throwing away that equity, or how do you protect that as well as diversifying and growing?
Yeah, really good question. So with this example of this data company that we renamed this past year, that was a huge question. Like, they've been around for decades. And so how do we maintain equity? Like, how do we preserve this? So what we did was we did a brand research study first. We talked with stakeholders, with customers, not just their existing customers, but also their sort of aspirational customer target that they wanted to expand to as their business expanded. And we identified what about the existing name worked. Is there any part that we should preserve, or does none of it work? The equity isn't as strong as we thought, we can throw it out. So we asked all those critical questions and really collected a lot of data. That was important because, the founder and executives really wanted more of that to make their decision from. I'll be honest, we've renamed other companies before, and there's just a knowing. They don't need the data. They're like, it's time, we're ready. But that was maintaining equity by keeping one of the words that was in the name and incorporating that word into the new name became a pillar of this project. So I haven't talked a lot about our individual naming process, but more than 50% of it is about creating naming criteria. So that's the job description of the name. It's never more than 5 things. It's all rooted in research. It's very specific to the project. And it's basically the 3 to 5 things that the name has to accomplish. And so in renaming this company based on that research, one of the core pieces was use this word in the name, essentially, like preserve that brand equity. That's going to be important in making this a smooth business transition.
So Nina, you spoke there about criteria and job descriptions. Can you give us a bit of context in the definition of those two for those listening in relation to this naming process?
Yeah. So, if you remember anything about the way that the naming group works, it's just an obsession with, it's that lawyerly way of looking at things. It's like strategy, it's having reasons, it's not just about creative spark. And so the naming criteria it's those 3 to 5 things that the name has to accomplish. So, and it's all based in research. And so what that might actually look like is, okay, in doing our competitive research, we've looked at your competitors and we've looked at trends in their names. An example I can talk about is Greenhouse, which is the talent and job hiring platform that we named. So basically, when we were naming that, we plotted all of the competitors on this spectrum, and we saw that there was literal white space in the suggestive realm. So there was a ton of names like Hire X and like Talent Driver and things like that that were very descriptive. And then there was kind of the Connexa, or I can't even remember, but there were these coined names that didn't have a lot of readily available meaning. But there weren't a lot of people sort of playing in the middle space where it was a more artful metaphor. So the names that we presented to the now Greenhouse team were in that space. And so anyways, I won't get too much into that, but that was one of those criteria was how do we create a suggestive name, because that's competitively differentiated. Another criteria might be around tone. So we understand who the audience is. Let's say our audience is kids. We want to make sure that the tone is like playful and exciting, but not too earnest, something like that. So, other things that name criteria can be about are about trying to make sure that we pick a type of name that is more easy to get from a trademark standpoint, something like that. So when people think of naming criteria, they might think more generally like has to be available for trademark, can't be offensive in key markets, but those are table stakes. Naming criteria is much more about these specific things that the name has to accomplish.
So going on from that, obviously words are quite limited, right? So there's only so many that we can use. So
most of them are trademarked.
Yeah, exactly, and these cause complications. So I'm trying not to kind of delve more into like what we talked about with Rob, but I want to dig in with you more about, do you see trends happening like within naming conventions? Like like the likes of Spotify, for instance, comes along, like do you see trends that are correlating to kind of movements and happening in society that allow kind of new names to emerge or not?
Yeah,
generally?
Actually, I will plug Rob at this moment, which is that he and my colleague John, who I mentioned, are about to launch like a huge naming report looking at years of naming data and kind of a trend analysis report. So you all should look into that, Rob Meyerson. I think like I look at the current sort of naming universe as like it's very evolutionary, like it's very survival of the fittest, and people are finding that there are certain types of species of name that are already, this is how I'm tying it into my shirt finally,
species.
that like there's already too many species, like people have to start evolving and changing, and the types of names that are already taken are the ones that you think are already taken, the ones that make sense right off the bat. They lean a little bit more descriptive, more automatically intuitive. So I think because of all of that, it's really pushing the creative bounds. And that's why we're seeing more constructed names. It's why we're seeing more metaphorical names. It's because the names that are available from a trademark perspective, from a domain perspective, they're just not available anymore. So we are seeing people having to push into more interesting spaces, which I love that. Like creativity needs constraints, and the constraints are getting, spicier as time goes on.
Yeah. So following that up then, and when you've got that CEO that's kind of all kind of concerns about these new words that he didn't really understand, and you tried to justify it and you gave a backstory, like, how often does that get pushed back because it's not safe? You know what I mean? Like, because I'm playing the role of that CEO now that's going to be, when we have a strategy and we like, this is amazing. It's so obvious to see where you could take this. There's the white noise. Let's go play. Let's have some fun. You can dominate, change the narrative, whatever. And they're still scared shitless to kind of take that step.
Yeah.
How does that work with you guys?
So it's definitely a common thing that we run into, which is the fear, the pushback. We have designed our process as much as possible to sort of get decision makers comfortable with what they will eventually see with regards to the name. And so if we didn't, then I think that fear would roadblock a lot more. If we were sort of more covert with strategy development, and it was much more sort of behind the curtain, and then at the last minute we were like, here's the name, I hope you like it, we would see more of, going back to evolution, that evolutionary response of, oh my God, tiger in the woods, I've never seen that before. But if we get execs to even review a deck of naming strategy, saying, all right, I know you're busy, but here are the 4 things that we decided that the name has to accomplish, and we just get them to sign off on that, it's basically like telling them, you may see a tiger in the woods in a few weeks. It's going to be orange. It's going to be fuzzy. It may be a little scary, but it's not going to hurt you. And so then, a few, month later, when we're actually showing them names, they're like, okay, this is what I'm prepared. Okay. All right. So it's like,
because this is your psychology coming through, right?
Absolutely.
I love it.
Yeah. It's like naming, I think you said it, Ash, is like, it can feel really subjective, so emotional. Like, we are christening things. We are deciding forevermore. It's the one brand decision that you can't change. You can redo your logo. You can do a million ad campaigns. You can actually totally change the product. But like, when you change the name, you're signaling that you kind of fucked up a little bit.
Yeah.
So much pressure. And so how can I depressurize that? Like, how can we just like have it be more of sort of elegant, low-key process, so it doesn't feel so terrifying?
It's interesting because like we run the same metaphor really about brand identity, right? And it's literally like your own child. You're going to name it, you're going to tell it how to walk, talk, dress, behave, act, and it is your baby. So I just wonder if there's the first thing I wrote down that I wanted to ask you was that I wonder if there is parallels in like your naming process and naming your child. I wonder if there's some things that go in there. You know what I mean? I've named a child.
Right
on. It had a lot of value base behind it, and it had a lot of deep sentiment behind it. But I wonder if there's kind of that same process that you run, and like looking at your values and how you're going to bring this thing to life with the vision and what it's going to grow up to look like. I wonder if there's psychological parallels to naming a child. I don't know. Just a thought I had.
So I have a lot to say on this because I have also named a child, and the two get compared a lot, and there's some parts of it that there's overlap. Like, absolutely, like what you just said is like values and sort of imbuing the name with meaning. My husband and I actually came up with criteria when naming our son.
We had criteria for both our boys.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Like,
in fact,
it couldn't be one of those things that like forever he was explaining to people how to pronounce it or how to spell it. Like, it had to be, simple in that way. So that part of the process is absolutely similar. And the other part of the process that's really similar is, Wes, I don't know if did you tell anybody beforehand what you were going to name your child?
No.
Smart.
No one, because I didn't want anyone's opinions or to try and, like, I guess, dishevel like what we're working on behind the scenes, so to speak. You get me?
And so then when you had your baby and you announced the name to people, did anybody push back on the name or say like, what?
Not at all. Like, I think it was expected, in a weird way. So
also, you conferred validity on your child's name by just saying, here it is, this is it. And that's what is so important to remember when we're naming a brand or a product, is when 8 of us from like the brand and executive team are on a Zoom and we are talking through the merits of a name, we are the like terrible neighbors that you have told, like, I'm thinking about this name. Like, we are those critical people. we are so much more critical than consumers will ever be. It's one of the most difficult ways that you can judge, how successful a name will be, because what happens when you launch a name into the marketplace is you confer that validity. There's the the positivity principle is that people understand that because it's from a company that they intended to have it be understood positively. So of course there's like the week one pushback of like, iPad sounds like feminine hygiene. Like there's always going to be that. But I think that's one major similarity with, naming your kid and naming a company is like, realize that like you don't want to become that opinionated neighbor. You just want to see the vision and believe in it, because people are going to accept the name once it's out there.
So Nina, did you or did you not present a PowerPoint to your partner with the strategic findings before the name?
I really, really should have. In fact, I feel like that would have been such a great sort of like piece of thought leadership for the naming group, is like how we got to Dell's name. His name is Dell, D-E-L.
Love that. Can I just, before we wrap this up, what was your criteria?
So the one that I talked about with you was like, we can't have him, people saying like, what's your name? How do you say it?
Yeah.
Andrew, my husband, and I wanted it to be something that, I should say his full name. His full name is Dell Wild, is his middle name. So we wanted a name that kind of had things that were important to Andrew and I, but not so specific to us that it didn't feel like a name that Dell would be able to like inhabit and really make his own. So of course we thought about like, are there things about places where we met, or certain music or movies, but that felt like too much about who we were. And so we really wanted to come up with a name that was sort of this blank slate that Dell could live into.
Love it.
So after that really fun question, I've got a really boring one.
That's not like you, Ash.
It's probably an important one. How do you measure the success of a name, right? So how do you measure the success of a name? Because I think then down the line, there's probably that one person when it all, or if it all goes wrong, says, I knew we shouldn't have fucking called it that.
Yeah. I mean, it's a really common question. And I've always said that if I could develop a tool that did that, like that could actually quantify that, like, oh my gosh, I would live in a way bigger house. Like it would just, but it's interesting because as I think of it now, the way that I would truly want to look at the success of a name is not just in consumer sentiment around the name and like, are people drawn to it? Does it still describe what the product is? Things like that. But I would also, in building that magical tool, which like maybe 2027 is the year, I would also look at sort of the operational efficiency that it created. Like, is it a name that sales teams don't have to explain every single time? Mm-hmm. Is it a name that the product and the engineers, like they totally get it? It's allowed them to develop product names, sub-brands and things underneath that. So I think there's like as we talked about at the very beginning of the call, there's like the explicit and sort of the like under the surface success of a name that I think really needs to be looked at, sort of the tip of the iceberg, and then the giant organizational sort of machine that supports that name, or that name enables.
And I guess what you were saying kind of when you address the success and measuring happens way before the future, right? It happens like when you hit the criteria, that's when it's become successful, and when you align people, and then it's an ongoing thing, I guess.
Yeah. So to answer that, like on the project level, it's because with that criteria, we don't just sort of present that criteria and say like, cool, it's here and we can refer to it. We actually have everybody that is going to be, everybody that has veto power on the name actually has to score all of the names against that criteria. So each name gets a numerical rating. And we use that as the basis for discussion. We look at names that are incredibly polarizing. We look at names that have a lot of alignment. Yeah, that's sort of the success is in aligning to the criteria, but having all of those decision makers sort of be like, some are more excited than others, but being like, okay, this is it. We've talked about it enough. There's a lot of data. We've aligned. That's success.
Can I ask like, I'm going to move into some like more fun questions now.
Okay.
But one curious one I've got is like, do you judge people on the name? On
what, like, do I see a company name and be like, why'd you call
just a person or just what they are? Like because you're obviously all in the world of names, and like before you've met these people, like, do you ever like judge them and go, oh, I wonder what they're going to be like? Do you know what I mean? Is there that comment through?
I think like at people's actual given names, like they weren't even in the room. Like they were in the room, but they were like a tadpole. So they didn't really have much to say at that point. But I can't help but judge people when they have, like a company name or something like that. It's like you had some say in that. Yeah. Or when people change their name, like, then I'm like, wow, you just took the bull by the horns. I love it.
You really like dissing your parents on that one.
Yeah.
So when you're not thinking about names, does that ever happen or not? Is it constantly always a thing?
Definitely always thinking of like bad puns. Like that part is inescapable. I'm mostly trying to get out in nature a lot of the time. Gardening.
I was going to ask, what do you do outside that then? Gardening? Is this like your CV coming out now? Gardening. Is this your resume coming out now? Is it like gardening, travel, food?
Yeah. Showing you how well-rounded I am.
The question I always like to ask is like, what song do you sing in the shower? What's your ballad?
Oh, I love karaoke. So I have a lot to say about that.
We have had some gems on this show. It's like the one main question. Roger Martin loves reggae. We've had it all.
Yeah. Also, Nina, this is Wes's question, so he's beyond biased on this. So he's really selling it. Me and Ash have different opinions on it, but anyway, we're not going to interfere with the 5 minutes.
Tell us your ballad. What's the karaoke song? Come on, hit it.
It's going to be basically like a 90s like R&B ballad, probably. So like your Tony Braxtons, your Chaka Khans, things like that. Yeah. Okay, now what is it for you guys? You can't ask that and then not share.
The Boy's Mine.
The Boy's Mine. I've never heard you sing that.
So good. You sing both parts?
Yeah, I'm in for some Tony. Yeah, I'm in with that.
Yeah, hell yeah.
I love karaoke. Like I like my karaoke song's Journey. But I don't actually like Journey, but I love singing that song. Like Don't Stop Believing. Love it.
Yeah. Crowd pleaser too.
Another one is Step by Step, the New Kids on the Block. Love that.
Hell yeah.
Step by step. You got to that's it.
Yeah.
Get to
all three of us, we sing Alicia Keys together as well, don't we?
There's video proof of that.
Yeah, we actually sing. We sing it better than her. We send it to her, and she told us, "You guys fucking rock it better than me."
I've got a photo with her. True story.
So we're coming to the end of the hour. You mentioned your Substack earlier on. You kind of slipped that in, but tell us a little bit more about it, because I think
tell us where we can get more of Nina's thinking. Yes.
Yeah. So in addition to my company website, thenaminggroup.com, my most recent project that I've been pouring a lot of time and energy into is my Substack called Naming at Scale. which really talks about so much of what we talked about today. All of basically the art and science of naming at organizational scale. So like, how do all of the major brands that you know, use, love, build out their naming practice?
Why did you decide to write that, and who is it for?
I decided to write that because nobody else was really talking about that. Like maybe a few other people were talking about it. My collaborator, Caitlin Barrett, writes a lot about sort of naming operations, but compared to how many naming agencies there are and how many naming practitioners there are, very few people were focused on naming at scale, at how do you build out naming as a practice area. And what I saw, like when I got into this 17 years ago, if you told me, hey, Ford, CVS, SAP, they all have in-house naming leaders or even naming teams, I would be like, yeah, right. And now they all do. Like a lot of major brands, Amazon, tons of others, have full-time naming hires. Like naming, because of the pace of business and the fact that companies now are launching like 40 products instead of 2 or 3 per year, like it's too complex, and the volume is too large, the fire hose is too strong. And so they need people to be managing naming. And so we need to be writing about that. We need to be talking about that. Like the industry is changing rapidly. That's where all of these requests are coming into the naming group of like, how do we build out naming systems? Like, how do we build out guidelines and getting teams on board? And it's just so much more than how do we name this? So it was time. It was time to write about it.
Nina, is naming too complex for AI to take over?
I will say something sort of controversial, which is that maybe not the creative part. It's not great at it yet, but when I think about to kind of like answer this question through the lens of like the AI fear machine, if you will, like the part of naming that AI will be able to slurp more quickly than other parts is in the like generation of name options. I can see it may get better at that, especially if you can give it the right inputs. The part that I don't see it being able to take over anytime soon is the is naming at scale, is like the wrangling of decision makers, the like talking with 30 stakeholders within a company and understanding how they make naming decisions, and then designing sort of alignment systems about that. Like it's just that part's too complicated. I don't see it happening, at least for a very long time.
Thanks so much for that, Nina. It's a wealth of knowledge, and I'm definitely signing up to that Substack. So I think everyone else should as well. I take it that's on your website.
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah.
In the chat.
Yeah. Thanks so much for joining us, Nina, and enjoy the rest of your weekend.
We didn't even ask the main question though, Ash.
What's the main question?
Oh yeah, the main question, the one that Ash hates.
Yeah, like Nina, you got a question for us?
Run out of time. No, go on then. Go on, Wes.
We can make it quick. Come on. Mm-hmm. We love asking just improv questions for us. Like it's always the way. I love it.
I'll just ask that question of like, okay, it's your last meal. What are you eating?
Boom! We've never had that one. Why am I going first? Mine would be something like, mine would be definitely a Negroni in there. I'd probably have all Negroni. I probably wouldn't eat food, if I'm honest. I'd that's the point.
Super solid Negroni.
Yeah, go for a Roni and some fried chicken. And I think that's kind of me in a nutshell.
Yeah, I think some good beer, Naffettato misto starter, freshly cut charcuterie with meat and cheese and a pizza. Yeah, I mean you can tell, isn't it? Classic. Go classic Italian.
Or is a gluten-free biscuit and a glass of water, because I've got to live up to my personality.
Yeah. I mean, so on brand. What about you, Nina?
I was just gonna say, like, I understand everything about all three of you. Like, I don't even need to ask any more
That's
questions.
such a smart question, that one. I'm gonna steal it.
I might stick as well.
What's your last meal?
Probably, if I could pick two things, Ben & Jerry's Chubby Hubby ice cream and mozzarella sticks.
With marinara. What
Yeah.
the question should have been is like, if you had to pick one of us to have your last meal with, which one would it be?
Oh,
Fried
You've
chicken,
never had a
pizza, or some water.
I guess Ash, because I've never had a gluten-free biscuit.
Yeah.
Hey, you know,
Jesus Christ!
You know, go in your
you were
kitchen.
meant to be a lawyer, huh?
Yeah. Go in your kitchen, find some cardboard, and chew it. You're good.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. All right. On this very boring note,
Yeah, we're gonna leave.
I wish you all a very, very lovely weekend. Nina, thanks again for your time. Go check out her work.
appreciate
This was amazing. Masterclass. Love it. And crazy how much alignment between your process and our process is.
Wild.
And yeah, makes me really happy that we're all on the right track.
Right on.
So much.
Thank you all so much.
You have a great day.
You too.
Bye.
Back to LA.
Bye.
friends.
Ciao.
Bye.
Really good. We should stack all this up, and you know what a beautiful book will be like. Every single one of these conversation is the fucking masterclass.
Well, it's just chapters, right? Every guest is a chapter. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But we're rubbish at promoting this, and like we'll say that live, man. So
Yeah.
if anyone
wants to promote us in the chat, just promote us.
Yeah.
not good at
We
it,
need help. We need help.
Also, what
And
we
if,
should
if,
ask-
if anyone has, sorry, go on, Wes.
we should ask the chat for guest recos as well. Recommendations.
Guest
Always
recommendation.
looking
Help
for
us
guest
promote it.
Yeah.
If
promote-
you know someone that is called with an A and is better looking than Ash, also we want to replace
yeah.
Ash, but we want to
could
keep the
need-
initial
we
A.
might need an upgrade.
So Andrew, Anthony, Alfie, you know, any name with a
Even
with
a
an
girl,
A.
let's get a girl in. A girl in the middle would be great, wouldn't it?
Yeah, Ashley. Let's get some.
Ashley.
Ashley, where are you at, Ashley?
Yeah, we should get
Yeah,
Ashley
Ashley.
to come in.
we
Actually,
did have Ashley
yeah,
from
but you were still here. We could just get Ashley.
Yeah, exactly. We want to replace you, mate.
trying to get rid of me now.
Yeah.
But let's see. Okay.
Well,
Anyway, guys, love you, leave you.
Yeah.
Happy weekend.
Have a fun
thanks for
week.
coming. See you in 2 weeks, I guess.
Bye.
Let's